10 to 9 then on BBC Radio Cornwall Breakfast. Now, a few moments ago, we were talking about the remnants of those World War I German U-boats that lie on the shores of Falmouth. You may even have driven past them and never known they were there. Certainly that's the case for me. The submarines were brought here after the German surrender in 1918, and they were then used for gunnery practice and to test depth charges. Well, we're talking about it today as some before seen pictures of the submarines have been revealed by Historic England. And as we've been telling you, you can have a look at those yourself on Facebook and Twitter this morning on our Radio Cornwall pages. But with us now is Nick Lyon and Mark Milburn from Atlantic Scuba, who've both dived on what is left of these U-boats. Gentlemen, good morning to you.
Good morning.
What are they like? What is still left?
Lots and lots of metal. You can't get the whole structure because the whole structure has been demolished. They were heavily salvaged. Eventually, we believe it was 1967, they were flattened under command of the harbour master because they were an eyesore. They were just lumps of rusty metal. So they're just flattened. So what we have left are quite a few plates of metal. But we have quite a few objects which we can recognise as being parts of submarines.
And Nick, does that in itself has created an environment for marine life to actually sort of inhabit and use?
Absolutely. They're like a little garden down there. They're very shallow. In fact, they can be snorkeled. You don't have to be a diver to go and see them.
Really?
Oh, yeah. They're only in a couple of metres at a low tide. But we've examined them almost microscopically. And we're really getting a picture of what life was like on the U-boats. I mean, for instance, I have there a little clay pipe stem.
Oh, yes, so you do.
If you think of a U-boat with 30 people in it, all crammed together and people smoking pipes in there, it must have been an absolutely horrendous atmosphere. And then to see that inhabited by wildlife, it's like it's given the wreck a completely second life. It's lovely. Yeah.
What do you make of these pictures that have come to light now?
Interesting. The wrecks have changed a great deal since the pictures were taken. In fact, they've changed a great deal since we started diving them. The big storms that hit a couple of years ago radically altered, certainly the wreck off Castle Beach, the UC-92, because we had just surveyed that and just measured it, almost sort of a fingertip search of it. We went back after the storm and it was a completely different shape. Bits were buried in sand, other bits were revealed. So those wrecks will change all the time just because we're so shallow.
Mark, Nick said that you could actually snorkel some of this structure as well. It's obviously bits of metal and things. How safe is it to do that?
It's safe. Obviously, you have to be careful of the sharp edges. So, one of the problems with it is covered in seaweed and kelp. It's very shallow. There's all sorts of colour. Some people won't even recognise it if they could be swimming above it. I mean, I've taken divers to the side of the boat, to the U-boat, and said, there you go. And they just look at me like it's a rock. It's just a rock covered in seaweed. Well, once you move the seaweed apart, you can see it. And obviously there are lots of sharp edges. And as Nick says, they are getting changed constantly by the storms.
You should really only proceed there if you've got, you know what you're doing.
You should be aware that there are going to be sharp edges. If there's any water movement at all and you're on the surface, the sharp edges, they're constantly getting ripped apart. And new edges getting revealed. And if you see a rusty edge, that's quite new because it's not covered in seaweed. And that probably has a very sharp edge on the end of it. And it'll cut through. I mean, we use Kevlar gloves holding onto bits. It'll cut through those.
Really? Gosh. So you really do need to be very, very careful if you are going to be brave enough to go there. What do you make of these pictures that we've got?
I've actually seen a few of them before. English Heritage. I work closely with Historic England. I'm actually licensee of 4 protected sites around Cornwall. And when they first saw them, I helped them identify which ones were which on those photographs. There are actually even more photographs that are available within the National Archive. The information on the National Archive that we've uncovered working with the Maritime Archaeology Trust, which is a charitable trust, we found out that the so-called storm that blew the submarines onto the rocks did not happen. They were manually hauled onto the rocks. We have photographs from the National Archive of people actually hauling them onto the rocks. There's a place called the Hole in the Wall, and you can see the remnants of metal spikes that were driven in on there to use where they would have put a pulley winch system to pull them up onto the rocks.
So why was that story put around then?
It was not known. I mean, this information's been buried in the National Archive. People haven't been too bothered about it. And there was a massive, great lifting rig that would lift the submarines out, drop them into deeper water. They'd drop the depth charges, lift them up and see what damage they caused to work out what was the best charge to use to damage the U-boats. And when they finished with them at the end of the season, which we believe was 1921, they took them with the lifting as close to the rocks as they could, and on the high tide, manually hauled them onto the shore.
Nick, what else is out there for people to explore if they're diving?
Oh, take your pick. Within swimming range of the U-boats, you have a 5,000-ton tanker wreck, the Ponus. We are discovering new wrecks all the time. It's unknown how many wrecks are just in Falmouth Bay.
And what's the clarity like as well?
Variable. This is Britain. Visibility can be fantastic. I mean, the U-boats are quite often very visible from the surface, the whole length of them.
So if people want to do that dive, and they have to go to a club, really, don't they? They need to be very, very sensible, properly trained to get the best out of that and to explore that seascape safely. Gentlemen, thank you very much for being with us this morning. Fascinating to hear your perspective on those U-boats. That's Nick Lyon and also Mark Milburn from Atlantic Scuba.